Well, hey guys, good to be with you today. And I've got a message on the power of love today. I thought it would be this is a good time to speak on this. There's a lot of questions that arise, especially after elections, and there's a lot of, I would say, obstacles, enemies, bad thoughts, trying to pull people away from one another instead of understanding what God has called us to do, and that is build relationships, not strain them. And so I thought this was a good time to share this with everyone. It's called The Power of Love, Luke chapter 10, verse 27. And we're going to deal with four topics today, really two of them. The first one we're going to deal with is the dependence in need of God, and interdependence we choose freely. Those are the two things. So when we think about Luke chapter 10, and let me go over there to the scripture, it says, "And he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." Now, the two great laws that we need to do is love God and love our neighbor, right? Well, when we get over here to this board here and we take a look at this, the two that we need to do is, number one, love God with all your heart, soul, and strength and mind. And we think and we realize the dependence we need to have on God. And when I think about the scripture, I realize how often the scripture talks about this, where God will supply us according to his riches in glory. God will give us a peace that passes all understanding. It is the Lord that has justified us, that we can have peace with God. All good and perfect gift comes from above. So if we need to learn how to be dependent upon the Lord, and those are just the scriptures that come pop in my head. There's so many more all the way through the scriptures. And we need to be dependent upon God. We need him. He doesn't need us. We need him. And that's what I want you to understand today, is that justification brings us in to a relationship with God, and it's sanctification that brings us into dependence upon him, to the place where one day we will understand the glorification. And boy, won't that be a great time when we see him as he is. Until that day, God is working on us. Now, the two things that we battle along that way is the independence and the codependence. Those are the battles that you and I have before us. The thinking that we don't need anyone, and the other thing is that we feel that we have these control issues, and we don't want to completely be dependent upon the Lord, so we become codependent on other things, other people. And that's not a good place either. That causes a lot of problems. But then we get into interdependence. And when we look at Luke chapter 10, verse 27, he talks about loving our neighbor as ourselves. And then he gives the story about the Good Samaritan and the man that fell amongst the thieves on the road to Jericho. And the Samaritan picked him up. He didn't have to, but he chose to. And he took care of him. He was willing to go through some pain and some struggle for the other person. He didn't have to, but he chose to. Now, a couple other people went along that road and passed away from him, said, "I can't help this guy. He's unclean." What were they saying? I don't choose to love him. He's not my neighbor. I'm dependent upon or independent of him. I can make my life without him. I choose without him. And so interdependence is what Jesus Christ did. He came into this world not because he had to, because he chose to, because he wanted to have a relationship with you and me. And when you and I become dependent upon God, and we realize that he supplies all I need, that he loves me unquestionably, then I can have these relationships with other people and begin to serve, not because I have to, because I've already got my supply from God, but I choose to because having you in my life makes it even better. My life is great. Me and the Lord are doing great, but I want you to be a part of my life as well. And that's what marriage is all about. That's what friendship should be about. That's how we ought to love our neighbor. Not because we have to, but because we choose to. And because we choose to, I'm willing to go through some struggle and some pain because I love you. as I love myself. So guys, think about this. Think about what's going on in our world and all the things that are operating to keep us from loving God, loving one another, and choose the Lord. And choose, not because you have to, but choose to love one another. Till next time, I hope you have a great weekend. See you then. Bye.